Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the nice welcome, and it's a great pleasure to be here today. My name is Popovic. I'm CEO and founder of NordicBiz, and in the next 15 minutes or so, I would like to tell you about the Japanese investor landscape in Europe and why Japanese investors might be the right fit for you if you are seeking funding. I will also touch upon what are the do's and the don'ts when you are dealing with Japanese investors, and also how we can help you along the way. So first thing first, why Japan, right? You might ask. Well, probably many of you know that Japan has a very large domestic market. They are the third largest economy in the world, and they have a population of over 125 million people. So this is definitely not a small market. And also Japan contributes more than 10% of the Fortune 500 companies. And probably it is less well known that the Japanese companies sit on a large pile of cash, more than their US counterparts. And the good thing is that they are very willingly and very actively invest abroad. And one reason for that is because their domestic startup ecosystem is still in a relatively nascent stage. So they need to go out of the country to find lucrative and really interesting investment opportunities. Now, another fun fact about Japan is that Tokyo has been recently chosen the most innovative city in the world. And those of you who have visited Tokyo in the past probably know what I'm talking about. Now, funny thing is that there are obviously many amazing and mind-blowing initiatives and projects are happening in Japan. Unfortunately, this part of the world, we hear less about those. Just take an example of the Woven City. I don't know how many of you have heard about this project, but it is a project by Toyota, which is building a prototype of the future. It is going to be a smart city on a 175-acre land near Mount Fuji, which you see in the background. And basically, the city is going to run on hydrogen, and it's going to be powered by robots and all the cool technologies that you can accumulate in a smart city project. By the way, they are very actively seeking new technologies and new solutions for this initiative. So if you have something to offer to them, please reach out to them. They are very competent and very experienced with working with foreign startups. All right, so let's talk business. Why am I talking to you about Japanese investors here in Riga? Well, the situation is that Japanese investors have been strategically looking into the Nordic and the Baltic region over the past couple of years. If you look at the statistics, over the last 3 years, the number of deals per year has been consecutively over 20. And I would say that's quite remarkable. And as far as 2022 is concerned, we are already aware of 13, 14 deals, and we are not even through half of the year. So I expect this year to be yet another record-breaking year in terms of Japanese investments only in the Nordics and the Baltics. So who are the players behind these investments? The first top investors are Japanese venture capital firms, CVCs, and also trading houses. So the first one with 18 deals, quite significant, is done by Nordic Ninja. It is a VC firm based in Helsinki, Finland, and they are primarily focusing on the Nordic and Baltic region, hence the large number of deals they have done. Second one, probably everybody knows this in the room and also online. SoftBank. SoftBank Visions Fund is the largest lead investors in the world. Mizuho, another VC fund, and Mitsubishi Group trading house, and Sony Group, as we heard yesterday. Sony is running an early stage incubator in Sweden. So if you look at the regional and the geographical distribution of all these deals, you can see that 3 countries stand out, and this is Sweden, Finland, and Estonia. Sweden, because of its mere size, the number of startups in the country, but Finland and Estonia are quite interesting cases, and the reason why they are successful attracting Japanese investment is because on country level, they have very active and very successful PR to Japan. In Estonia, if you look at the e-Estonian e-residency system, even the former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is an Estonian e-citizen. So, this is what I'm talking about, promoting the country on the highest levels. Now, on these two slides, the next two slides, I listed just a couple of Japanese investors which are active in Europe and which have a very active innovation focus. We are aware of more than 50 Japanese firms in Europe which are actively working with innovation. Either they are having an innovation hub, or an innovation lab, or an R&D center, or their CVC arm is stationed here in Europe. I obviously don't expect you to be able to read these tiny letters. I apologize for that. But what I also wanted to highlight here is that unlike other CVCs in the world, the Japanese CVCs are quite famous for investing broadly. Just take an example of Mitsubishi Chemical Europe. They are one of our strategic partners. And as you might expect, they invest quite heavily in chemicals, in new materials. But equally, they are investing in energy, AI, biotech, health, life sciences, transportation, sustainability, really, really diverse. Interesting story, one of our most recent startups in our portfolio, a medtech company addressing Alzheimer's disease, and they were like, when I told them, look, let me introduce you to them, I think this might be an interesting solution for them. And they were like, Peter, are you out of your mind? Why are you introducing us to a Mitsubishi Chemical? It's a chemical company. But, they were indeed interested, and this is definitely a characteristic. So don't be surprised if you might be approached by a Japanese CVC which does not function in your sector. This is actually quite common that they reach out to a little bit more distant disciplines. So what are Japanese investors looking for in Europe? In terms of verticals and focus areas, this can be clustered into three main categories. The first one, which really stands out, and this is rather more recently, is sustainability. Sustainability, energy, smart cities, circular economy, everything along those lines. Second one is deep tech, industry, advanced manufacturing, chemicals, new materials, and then the third one is healthcare and medical. So in terms of strategic fit, obviously Japanese VCs are looking for a good return on investment, not a surprise, I think. But CVCs are much more interested in a technological fit. And either they do this for the sake of expanding their business and complementing their existing offering, or they are trying to tap into something fundamentally new to them, which we might call, the typical McKinsey Horizon 3 projects or the Division X project. In fact, one of the most amazing and mind-blowing project I've come across recently by incumbent firms, and I'm not talking about the Teslas and all that, because they are founded to disrupt, but by incumbent firms is by a Japanese company. And this is ANA, one of the Japanese flag carrier airlines. And what they are doing is they are experimenting with avatar technology. So instead of physically transporting passengers and customers from one location to another, they are experimenting with teleporting passengers into avatars that are waiting for them in their destinations. So if you think about it for an airline, this essentially means scrapping the entire fleet of airplanes. So I would say that's pretty disrupting. So in order to be a perfect match for Japanese companies, I tried to list the most important conditions and criteria that you will need to tick in order to be considered. First of all, ideally, you are in a late seed stage. Ideally, even you are seeking and putting together your Series A round. And if you are dealing with a CVC, as I mentioned, the technological fit is the most important. They're much less concerned about return on investment. As long as you have something unique to offer, the return on investment is not even really a question. Ideally, you have IP protection in place, at least patent pending status. This is actually more important for you than for them. just to ensure your long-term competitiveness in the Japanese market. And ideally, you have references or paid customers, but this is definitely something very important. At least you should have a POC or a successfully completed POC or POV project. In terms of business model, you should have a very good scalability, and ideally you should be backed by some notable investors. Japanese, I would say, they are still a little bit more conservative by nature, and for them it's very important that they know that there is a notable, strong investor already backing you. And another interesting characteristic is that they are typically not taking the lead investor role, so they are typically just coming as one of the co-investors. So what could be a typical way forward to work with Japanese CVCs? Typically the relationship starts with hopefully a paid POC or POV project, which could easily turn into investment, and in certain cases even merger and acquisition, which is actually quite a common way for them to grow business and expand business in Europe. So what are the few things that you should keep in mind when dealing with Japanese? Because as you probably have heard, there are some stereotypes that, it can be a tough and a bumpy road. Well, first of all, you need to make sure that you don't underestimate the local power play. Take the example of Uber, for example. This is probably the most famous failure case in Japan. They underestimated what it means and what it takes to disrupt the taxi business. They were not aware of how much they were embedded into the local political system and what kind of lobby they have, and they came in quite arrogantly, and they miserably failed. So you need to know who is with whom, and this could be actually a complex situation. Very, very, very important, Japan is a trust-based society. So typically when you reach out and write an email or make a cold call, most probably you will not get any feedback at all. I would suggest don't even try. So basically the way forward is that you need to find an intermediary who is willing to introduce you to your target customer. And basically the reason why this is important is because that player is the one who will take responsibility for you in case something goes wrong. This is something which is taken very seriously in Japan. You need to also show face, commitment. You need to invest in getting to know the people. It's definitely a people business. And what it means is that you need to frequently travel to Japan. Now after COVID, this is getting a little bit easier now, but it's still not 100% free. I think there are still a 10,000 limit on the incoming people to Japan, including the Japanese citizens. So still there is limitation, but you need to visit frequently. You need to go and socialize with them. You need to dine with them. You need to go drinking with them. This is something definitely very important before you can start making business with them. And it could take some time. Customer support. Especially if you are in a B2C, then you need to make sure that you have a very good quality customer support delivered in local language, and it's available 24/7. And another very important point is that the concept of MVP, minimum viable product, is something which is not very well fitting the Japanese culture. What I mean by that is that once you have a prototype, once you have a product, that product needs to be almost complete, because typically in the Japanese market you will have one chance. So, this kind of A/B testing, let's do this, let's do that, usually doesn't work. So make sure that, by the time you reach the Japanese market and you're considering entering the Japanese market, you have a product which is ready. And then, last but not least, this is quite obvious, you need to be familiar with the local etiquette and protocol. Now, the good news is that you're not entirely alone on that journey, and we are here to help you. We are a small team of 8 people, and we are working to secure investment, funding, paid POC, POV projects, R&D collaboration projects, joint ventures for our customers. And naturally, we are quite strong in those 3 verticals or 3 clusters that I mentioned to you before: sustainability, smart city, circular economy, deep tech industry, chemicals, new materials, and life sciences, medical, medtech, and health tech. We are incorporated in Tallinn, Estonia. We are also an e-Estonian company, but we work out of Stockholm. And we have a strong 25 startup in our portfolio, only from the Nordic and the Baltic, and this is complemented by another 40-45 startups from the rest of the Europe through a strategic partner. And we are primarily focusing on the Japanese and the Singaporean market, where altogether we have a strong 40-45 corporate clients, customers, including VCs and CVC firms. So we are here to support you, and I definitely look forward to meeting you and discussing opportunities, how we can approach Japanese investors for you. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have during the rest of the day. Thank you very much for your attention.